Hello, welcome back to Desperate Living, Cultural Chaos and Forgotten Stories. Today we're going to look at a new release of the greatest TV show of the 1970s, Columbo. Now, Columbo of course has been out on disc many times in the past. In fact, here we have an older DVD edition, and if we take a quick look at how this was packaged, you can see it came in a collection of wallets that just fold out into many discs, and a great collection for its time. It wasn't perfect by any means. I mean, first of all, if we look at this, you can see that although it gives a list of episodes, it's a little vague on what some of the extra content was in these discs, which did include some significant content, including the pilot episodes, but we'll get into how the new one measures up in a few moments. Now, Columbo, of course, is the classic detective show starring Peter Falk, although it actually did originate in 1960 as an episode of the Chevy Mystery Show, which was one of those TV anthology drama shows that used to exist, with the character being played by Bert Freed in an episode called Enough Rope.
Dr. Fleming?
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Lieutenant Columbo, Doctor, police.
I don't understand.
Well, I think you better sit down. I have some bad news for you.
Something's happened to Claire.
Doctor, you sure you won't sit down?
Where is she? What's happened? Was she in an accident?
She's dead.
That was then adapted into a stage show called Prescription Murder, which starred Thomas Mitchell as Columbo, and it wasn't until 1968 that this was shot again, with Peter Falk playing the role. Falk was, by all accounts, considered to be a little bit too young, but he clearly made it his own straight away. And so there were the two pilot episodes, the one in 1968, Prescription Murder, and then Ransom for a Dead Man in 1971, which then led straight into the 1971 series. Now, Columbo, of course, was not a series in the traditional sense. The stories were effectively feature length, and it was kind of like a movie of the week sort of situation, where it actually interlinked with other shows, as which was one of those rotating series where it would be like intercut with other shows. So you'd get an episode of Columbo, for example, and then you would get a couple of other shows as well, which allowed the show to be less rushed. It didn't have to do complete seasons. Each one felt more, as I say, more like a movie than a TV, just an episode of a TV show. Anyway, let's take the shrink wrap off and have a look at these new discs, and we can go through it here. So let's begin season 1. Now, as people will tell you regularly, the first episode of Columbo was directed by Steven Spielberg, which is technically true, but that's Murder by the Book, which you'll see comes after the two pilots. So yes, it was the first actual episode, but there had been two previous episodes of the show setting up the character. And certainly, if you watch Columbo in Prescription Murder, he's a little less shabby, he's a little more aggressive, but the whole concept is there straight away. As we know with Columbo, it wasn't a whodunit in the style of a lot of other detective shows. It was a how catch 'em. So we see the setup immediately with the murder. We see who's the murderer is. There's no mystery about that. And the interest comes in seeing how Columbo actually figures out who the killer is, which he seems to do very quickly, but then how he just tricks them or finds the evidence to convict them.
Hold it.
As people who've watched the show will be aware, sometimes this is the kind of thing that you think, yeah, it might actually get thrown out of court. But nevertheless, it's really fascinating watching how he does that, how he frustrates them. Famously, Peter Falk would fidget quite a bit while delivering his dialogue in scenes with the murderer. So he would rummage through his pockets looking for things. He would mumble to himself. He'd look around, deliberately frustrating the actor so that they would then have the same kind of reaction that the murderer might have when they feel impatient. Columbo was always a very class-ridden show in the sense that Columbo himself is, although you imagine that he's not on a low wage, being a police detective, most of the people that he comes up against are, wealthy, important, influential figures, and quite a lot of the time that he is looked down on by these people, and he plays on that. He plays on the idea that they think he's a bit stupid, he's a bit blundering, he's a bit low class, and so he makes them make mistakes, let themselves go. And of course, it's all manipulation. So as you can imagine, with any TV show running for this amount of time, there were some interesting guest stars in the show. Sometimes the same actors appearing season after season in different roles, which television tended to do at that time. You could kind of get away with that. People were quite happy to let it go. So actors like Jack Cassidy and Robert Culp would turn up again and again as different characters, but always good. That's the point, that they were always interesting villains, and they were always the villains. Other actors who appeared in the show over the years, John Cassavetes, who was one of Peter Falk's real-life friends. Patrick McGowan would appear a few times and would also direct several episodes of the show. Ray Milland, Roddy McDowall, Leonard Nimoy, whose appearance is definitely one of the best episodes and one of the few where we actually see Columbo kind of throwing aside the facade of being this avuncular, bumbling character and become genuinely angry. Lawrence Harvey, Martin Landau, Donald Pleasance, who again appeared in one of the best episodes. I think most people would agree, Any Old Port in a Storm. Which is one of the episodes where Columbo actually strikes up a genuine, not quite friendship, I suppose, but he's friendly to the murderer. He maybe sympathises with them a little bit, as he says in one episode. He can sometimes like the person, not like what they did, but like the person as an individual. Other guest stars, Janet Leigh, Dick Van Dyke, Robert Vaughn, George Hamilton, Leslie Nielsen before he became a big comedy star, Ruth Gordon, who was the star of the episode I was just referencing, Try and Catch Me. Loads of big names, and they all seem to be having fun by and large. Everybody who appears in Columbo seems to be, getting into the spirit of the show. And we'll just dig the last disc out of the box here. quick look. So you can see that these are essentially a complete package. They've got notes on each episode inside the sleeve here. Where Columbo continued into the 1980s and into the 1990s, so you might consider that a collection covering the 1970s edition, seasons 1 to 7, is incomplete. I would argue otherwise, to be honest with you. I mean, yes, it is, and perhaps if you're a completist, you want every episode of the show. But quite frankly, the 1980s episodes, which came some years after the original run had finished, the original run of Columbo effectively ran from 1971 into 1978, and then it didn't return until 1989, when it ran for another 3 seasons with various specials, some of which just really bastardized the whole concept of what Columbo was. They got rid of the How Catch 'Em thing, turned them into regular police dramas for no good reason. So I think that the 1970s collection is all you need. And I'll be honest, not every 70s episode is brilliant. I think the worst of them are still very entertaining. But the best of them, and I would argue that that's maybe 90% of them, are absolutely brilliant. They're funny, they're intriguing, they're deeply satisfying, and brilliantly made. So they're well worth the effort of picking up. I mean, yes, Columbo is on TV all the time. I'm certainly aware of that. And so, as with any box set of TV shows, popular TV shows, you might be questioning, what's the point of owning it? It's just on TV all the time. But these are newly remastered 4K remasters. Obviously, these are Blu-rays, not UHDs. But it's all, of course, the show was all shot on film, so there's none of that kind of TV quality to worry about. These will look as good as any other kind of 70s TV show shot on film, or indeed any movie. And yeah, so why should you pick them up? Well, for a start, they are great. Having them all and being able to plough through every one of them rather than just be a slave to the TV schedules is clearly good. It's it's a nicely put together box. I'm really looking forward to digging into this. This is a show that you can watch again and again and again. Like the best whodunits, and obviously it's not a whodunit, but it works in a similar way. But like the best of these crime mystery shows, it doesn't matter if you've seen it and you know how it ends. Even less so here, because of course we know who the murderer is, we know who the killer is, so the mystery is how Columbo solves it, and that's less of a mystery clearly than just finding out who the killer is. So in that sense, they're very watchable again and again and again. Of course, you'll forget exactly how he solves it. You'll start noticing additional things with each new watch of it. You'll pick up on little clues, and sometimes you'll marvel about the way that the show just hides some of this information from you as well. I think it does it really well. So of course, yes, this is a great thing, highly recommended. And if you compare it to the old DVD, even leaving aside questions of picture quality and so on and so forth, I mean, you can see that it takes up half the space, and if you are stuck for space, which some of us are, then yes, you know, this is a much better item to own. There has been talk, of course, over the years of the show being revived in some way, shape or form. Doesn't feel like a good idea. I know that some years ago in the UK, Dirk Benedict took on the role for a revival of Prescription Murder on the stage, and you know, that's fair enough. But as a new TV show, a new movie, I don't know. I think that's probably a bad idea. I mean, there have been bits of Columbo merch. This wild book, Columbo, the Helter Skelter Murders, basically involves Columbo in the Manson family killing by the author of Columbo the Grassy Knoll, which, as you might imagine, is Columbo solving the Kennedy murder, the John F. Kennedy murder. And yeah, you know, there are other kind of less true crimey Columbo novels out there as well. If you're a collector, so if you're a fan of Columbo, you know, there's stuff out there for you to pick up. But chief amongst them obviously should be this new box set, which seems to be, I mean, maybe there'll be a UHD one in the future, who can say, but I think for now this is going to be the definitive collection. You know, it's on 20 discs, which is only 3 discs less than the DVD set, so clearly, you know, it's not like they've been skimping on quality. This is a much nicer edition, and yeah, looks much nicer as well, I would say. You know, it's less of, I mean, if we look at this, I mean, it's not bad, but it has a certain cheapness to it, especially with these spines here that are a bit, you see, it's easy to put them in upside down as well, as I've done. I think that this new version obviously is much more attractive to sit on your shelf. And so yeah, if you're interested in buying this, I will put a link below. Goes without saying, although I'll say it anyway, that this was sent to me as a review disc, so you know, look at that as being paid promotion if you like. And if you want to read more about the Helter Skelter murders, there's an article on the Desperate Living website, which again I will link to below. So thanks for watching. We'll be back very soon with more new disc reviews and more old book reviews. So see you then. Oh, and just one more thing. If you enjoy this sort of content, don't forget, like, subscribe, set your alerts, leave a comment, and support us through our various fundraising efforts. Thank you and goodbye.